we're talking about culture, but the culture of you. The culture of you. And we're also talking about first impressions. So if we think about brain chemistry and how it comes across, when you're really paying attention to people, you tend to know a lot about how you feel about someone in the first couple seconds, the first minute, even if we don't listen to it or pay attention to it. And why is that? Because the way we come in a room, the way we approach a subject, the way we listen, the way we agree or disagree, that's actually telling people how our brain's working, right? It's telling people how our brain's working. So that's important. So if you're familiar with Simon Sinek does a really great, does a really fantastic little, someone put it up on TikTok, about your opinion and about before you nod, before you agree yes or disagree no, to catch yourself. So let's talk about that for a minute. One of the simple ways to actually increase your confidence level, remember, confidence is just your brain getting through something different. Every second is something different, right? So every time you try something new, it doesn't matter. It could be going outside when you don't want to, taking a walk, doing anything. Your brain is saying, there's something uncertain. I'm about to walk outside. I'm about to do something new. I'm about to walk into this restaurant. I'm about to say hello to a group of people or walk into a room that I haven't been in before. That's your brain right there. That's its moment to actually build confidence or erode it. Right? So if I'm listening to people talk and someone says something that years ago I might have said I disagree with, in today's world I'll turn around and say, that's so interesting. I never thought of it that way before. That is actually helping you develop your level of confidence. Where if I say I agree and I disagree, it's minimizing our ability to develop confidence. So try it today, nice and simple. Try it today, super simple. Every time you hear your brain starting to agree or disagree or offer your opinion, rephrase it in your head. Rephrase it. Rephrase it to, that's interesting. That's interesting. If you agree with someone and you feel yourself, and I do this a lot, I'll start to nod and then I'll catch myself and think, stop. Make your brain work more effectively. Make it develop more confidence in listening. So I'll do that by turning around and saying, that's interesting. Even in my head. So instead of agreeing or disagreeing, because that is the beginning of a fight, flight, or freeze response. And remember, once I say, you're so right, I've stopped listening. I've started to have a conversation about me agreeing with you in my own head. And if I say, I don't agree with that at all, now I've started to have a conversation about me disagreeing with you. And neither one was your conversation. Your conversation was about what you thought of something. And so listening to that. So try this. Here's what happens in your prefrontal cortex. When I agree and disagree, I'm literally shutting down a conversation for a moment. Might be forever, but it's going to be shutting down the conversation for a moment, right? So think about that. If I start to say, that's so right, what I'm really saying is, wow, that feels good that someone actually thinks what I think. So if you turn around and give that a shot and you feel yourself or you see yourself nod, then you can stop yourself and you can say, that's so interesting, or continue on, or tell me more. Because what I'm really saying is, you keep going and I'm going to keep listening. Because I didn't need to stop the conversation. I want to encourage your conversation. So of course the person speaking to you likes that. That feels good to them, because who here, if you've ever felt you don't mind being misunderstood, right? Our brains love being understood. Who doesn't love being listened to? So sometimes we use agreement to say, I'm listening to you. But to our brain, it's really not. It's actually saying, I'm actually listening to you less because I'm busy agreeing. So why does that read backwards, by the way, with the green screen? Maybe I just don't know how to do this because I'm pretty new to TikTok. But back to it. So today, give it a shot. When you feel yourself saying, I agree or disagree, when you feel yourself or see yourself nodding your head or shaking your head, either mentally or physically, if you're shaking your head, if you're moving into, I don't agree with that, or you're wrong, say it. Even say it out loud. I've never thought of it that way before. Or, I don't usually think of it that way. So what I've actually done is I've activated the parts of my brain that listen better, that understand people more. I've activated the part of my brain that actually elevates my IQ, my potential IQ, meaning I can access more of my IQ. And I'm now starting to understand them better. What this does to your stress, it starts to drop it immediately. Because remember, even agreeing with someone, and you might know this, have you ever watched news and they talk about some negative subject? Doesn't matter what news you watch, left, right, or center, I don't care, they're all built the same way. They watch some you watch something you agree with and you're like, that's right, they are horrible, right? That's your stress level coming up. That's your confidence level decreasing. It's actually your security level decreasing, right? So when someone's talking and you disagree with them, do this. I've never thought of it that way before. That's interesting. I'm going to consider that. I'm going to contemplate that. Remember, I'm not saying that you're going to turn around and suddenly like that opinion. But what you've done is not shut down the conversation. What you've done is not stop listening. You've actually increased your confidence by listening to something instead of constantly making a decision about it, right? Constantly making a decision. So that's just one way to improve your relationships, but also minimize your stress and anxiety. Again, if you're familiar with this TikTok page or my program, I train the Navy SEAL candidates, active duty, Marines, all sorts of people. I work with executives, first responders. I do some classes at some universities for future therapists in there. So we can understand each other better. And understanding how your brain works is actually the way to understand someone else. It has very little to do. Understanding someone has very little to do with them. It has everything to do with you understanding you and being able to activate your prefrontal cortex more frequently and minimize how often your limbic system or your fight, flight, or freeze system is done. So it's really super interesting. Opinions. Every time you have an opinion, turn it into a sentence of curiosity. That's really interesting. I have the 24-hour challenge, not offering your opinion for 24 hours. Not offering your opinion. So when you're about to agree or disagree, stop and just listen. Stop and just listen. When you're about to say, oh no, that's wrong, or my opinion is on this topic in the news or that topic, you'll notice I don't mention the topics because even to mention them will start to activate your fight, flight, or freeze system if you're really intense about those subjects. And again, my dogs are in the other room. Thank you. So that's interesting. We talk about stress. We're hearing people talk about stress and anxiety so much. Remember, research shows us that no one thing stresses people out. Somebody could be afraid of snakes, creates anxiety. Another person loves them, doesn't create anxiety. So no one subject or topic stresses everybody out. Nothing causes anxiety. It's our perception of it. It's our perception. So if we change the way we respond to things, we're going to increase our ability to perceive differently. Increase our ability to perceive differently. Someone says here, but I can't help it. And I get it. I get it because you're not trying to solve it. Remember, you are always going to have some anxiety in your life and your day. Your brain is designed to help you out by having some anxiety. Well, someone says, okay, this is a great one. That's how I interact with my wife. I just let her talk and I stare blankly at the wall. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about. The opposite. But I love what you're doing. You're halfway there. You're halfway there. So, because what you said was, I just let her talk. But what you also said was, I'm not listening. So what that means, let's forget about your wife for a second and say, what's it mean to you? And I realize, believe me, been in relationships, challenging, super challenging. What this means to you is that you've actually lost your ability to activate your best self. To forget about your wife for a minute. You've lost your ability to forget your best self. And I love what you said. I just stared blankly at the wall. Because what happens to us when we start to do this is now our brain can't make good decisions. We've actually repressed. We might say that this person is oppressive or the conversation or we're being yelled at or whatever, but we're starting to repress our positive chemistry. We are literally creating anxiety and depression by that. So here's what happens. And I love your initial answer is that you stare blankly at the wall and you don't engage at a higher hostile level. So fantastic, fantastic. Consider this. What it does is it puts your brain in a bit of a stalemate. And now it can't grow to say, how would I communicate better? How would I communicate if I didn't want to be in these situations? Would I set a time limit? Would I say, hey, I need to stop this for a minute. I can't hear you as well as I'd like. I really value listening to people. Love it. Love valuing to listening to people. So staring blankly at the wall for me is a big challenge. And believe me, I've done it. So when I read your post there, it resonates because I've done it before in my life where you just resign yourself to staring blankly and then I just shut down, right? And so great, someone else just wrote that. I just shut down. And that's what it is. It's literally going into fight, flight, or freeze and using freeze and flight. It's a version of fleeing without leaving by freezing, right? Freezing in nature is one of the most common fight, flight, or freeze responses. Animals do it all the time. People do it too. If you hear a loud noise, it goes boom. They freeze first. They turtle. They kind of turtle down and they freeze. So think about that next time you're doing it. What would you, if you really were listening, so try it with that significant other, whatever, and say, you know what? Instead of staring blankly at the wall, you did a great first step. You said, I am not going to engage at a hostile level. Instead of staring blankly at the wall, turn around and say, I'm really going to listen to my significant other. In this case, the person mentioned their wife. So I'm going to leave you with one last topic before I go, because I've loved the comments and it's helpful for me. I'm making a class for Thursday. By the way, we offer a free series on leadership, brain chemistry, the behaviors of developing confidence, minimizing anxiety, Thursday nights on Zoom at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Look on our website at directaction.us. Directaction.us. So those classes are free. It's the same classes I teach to corporations, first responders, future therapists, things like that. So it's really, it's pretty interesting, and we're always going to leave you with little things to do. And someone had added that they're going to try that with their significant other, but it's just uncomfortable, right? Totally. And I love what you just said. It's uncomfortable. Oh, I'll get back to this. How's the guy who face planted on Sunday? He's awesome. That's called bonking, right? He was so carb depleted that he stood up too fast out of the cold water and face planted. But back to the comment about being uncomfortable. I love what you just said. It's uncomfortable. Remember, your brain is designed to make you average, right? Average behavior feels incredibly safe for your brain until you learn what else to do. You learn what else to do. So a brain that doesn't know what else to do, and this is why I lead these discussions, a brain that doesn't know what else to do starts to push itself, its IQ, its EQ, its listening, its immune system, its ability to pay attention, its ability to sleep well. It starts pushing it towards average, right? Your brain is hardwired to make you average, or slightly less than average. But everything you learn and practice, you're now pushing into your prefrontal cortex, which is actually much, much smarter. That's where your real intelligence is, but it's not natural. You have to learn it and practice it and learn it and practice it. You have to take a risk. You have to take a risk. So when it's uncomfortable, you're doing great. When it's uncomfortable, listen harder. Because when it's uncomfortable, that's when we come up with, boy, I don't like this feeling. Right? I don't like this feeling. But if I actually listen to the speaker, or I listen to myself, I get to make a decision. Do I say, look, I need 5 minutes, my head's freaking out, or I'm going to listen to you, or I understand you, or one thing. You might just say in those uncomfortable situations, you know, I wasn't thinking of it that way. You're not giving in. You're not saying you're wrong. You're not saying you're right. You're literally listening to someone and saying, you know, I wasn't thinking of it that way. You might notice that if you fall into silence, the other person escalates, which is not because you fell into silence, but there's a kind of a concept that's going to be 100% in every room. And if I'm going to take away 90%, someone else is going to add it. So when the conversation isn't productive and it isn't activating your prefrontal cortex with listening and whatnot, it's very common to have one person escalate and one person minimized, right? So learning what to say that isn't argumentative, or learning how to listen better for yourself will often calm that other person down to some degree, right? Because silence can really stress people out, and it's not your fault. You just happen to use silence and they happen to escalate. So you didn't cause the escalation. It is a natural effect in a lot of conversations. So, and someone wrote, when you're essentially thrown from your norm, you get anxious, right? And most of us, which one of you have had a normal day in the last couple of years? Who has had a day where someone hasn't thrown a wrench in your plan? Right? Your brain, usually I have a whiteboard in the other room. On Thursday nights, I'll have a whiteboard behind me. And one of the things on the whiteboard is the pathway of negative emotions. The thing that creates anxiety, what is it? What creates anxiety? Uncertainty and change. What kind of change? Any change. Any change starts your head towards a fight, flight, or freeze system. Any. When you're going to go out to get to the car, you've done this maybe thousands of times. You've headed out to your car. Your brain says, oh, we're going to go outside. I'm pretty familiar with going outside, so I'm going to have the smallest response of paying attention. But if you're going outside of a building into a parking structure for the first time, your brain says, oh, I'm going to have a little more of an anxious response. This is a parking garage. And then if you've ever heard stories of things happening in parking garages, now that learning mixes in with your current uncertainty and change, and we have whatever level of stress people have in a parking garage. For somebody, it's very little. For someone else, might be great, might be threatening in that new parking garage for them. So any change triggers your fight, flight, or freeze system. What we do at that moment, how we direct ourselves and our thoughts at that moment, decides whether it gets worse or whether it gets better. Remember, you need your fight, flight, or freeze system. You absolutely need anxiety. We absolutely need fear as motivators for ahead, as warning signs, as protective measures, all those things. So, and somebody writes, I feel really anxious when I'm not under a lot of stress. Fantastic. I love your phrasing. I love your phrasing. I feel really anxious when I'm not under a lot of stress. I love that. Think about what we're actually saying. What we're saying is, when I'm stressed, it's so normal for me. I'm so accustomed to it. I'm so accustomed to it. So I now recognize it when it's not there. So I love what you're saying. For many, many people, and remember, our brain naturally grows up in stress. It naturally grows up uncertain and anxious until we're about 25, 26 years old, and our brain matures enough that we start to be able to use other tools more wisely. So when you think things are calm around you, right, it's time to direct your brain chemistry. This is what I call neuroscience no man's land, behavioral no man's land. Your brain is so used to being anxious or being stressed, running late, being in negative relationships, noticing negative things about people. It's so used to it that it only has a strong negative gym. So all the reps you've been doing in your life are usually negative. I always say we're either training at the negative gym or we're training at the positive gym, right? So all the reps you've been doing are in your negative gym. So all of a sudden we get to a calm moment and we think, I haven't built up any strengths for this. I don't even know where the positive gym is. The positive gym is. So what I encourage you to do, don't tackle big items, right? Your brain, if I told you we're going to go to the other side of the room, well, we're not going to do that, are we? We're going to take a step there, and a step there, and a step there, and a step there. Our objective was to go to the other side of the room, but we're not just going to end up at the other side of the room. That's how chemistry works. We have to take one step, and one step, and one step. So pick one behavior for like 5 minutes, especially in the morning. How you start your morning dictates how your head actually develops in positive chemistry. Do you get up in a hurry and stressed out? Boom, you're training your brain to be like that all day. Get up a half an hour earlier, even if you lose sleep. I have to get up super early in the morning because I know how much stress running late and being frantic causes. Now, some of you might wake up in the morning and be frantic already. That's okay. That's okay, because that's just the way it's working for you. It's just going to take practice. Remember, it took years to develop an anxiety level, years to develop a type of stress. If you had a rough childhood or relationships, Lots of people helped you develop that stress and anxiety, right? Thanks for them. But here's the great part. If your head is really anxious, when you start doing the practice of creating positive chemistry, creating behaviors, I use this expression a lot. If you come from a rough background, super anxious, great, because you know what you're running? You're running a high-speed 8-cylinder motor. It's just being trained at the negative gym. It's being fed negative fuel. When you start to train your brain for positive, and we'll talk more about this on Thursday night, start to train your brain for positive, you still have a strong 8-cylinder motor, ready to rock. So that's why if I work with Navy SEAL candidates or military candidates or first responders or people, and they'll say, oh, I had this rough upbringing, I think, good, we can work with that. Because you already have a very strong 8-cylinder motor. Right? If you grew up in the Brady Bunch family, fantastic, love it for you. We've got to go into situations that create some anxiety and go into situations that create some positivity. But for the most part, the person I usually work with, a lot of folks have had some anxiety in their history. Great, you got a strong 8-cylinder motor, but it takes some work to make your motor run off positive fuel instead of negative. There's a lot of little moments of work that have to go into that. So start your day well. You've heard the Rear Admiral McRaven video talking about making your bed in the morning. Making your bed, and then I'll add one thing to what Mr. McRaven said. Notice that you made it. Make your bed and take a look at it. Notice that you made it. Oh, there's Milo saying hello. Milo makes his bed every morning. So notice that you made your bed, and your brain chemistry is going to start getting super positive. Guess what? The worst thing, other than like drugs and, physical self-harm, what is the worst behavior you think that you could do on your brain chemistry? What is the most damaging thing most of us do voluntarily that creates anxiety and minimizes our problem-solving, creativity? Who's got something? Anybody? All right, nobody yet. It's being late. On my website, directaction.us, I just added a blog. It's a long one. Being late. Here comes the answers. People wrote internal negative self-talk, doubt. All of these things are reactions, by the way. Internalized negative self-talk, they're all reactions to something, right? We looked at something, we felt something. Your head doesn't know what to do with that feeling or that chemistry. So it says, hey, let's make something up. How about this? You suck. How about this? I'm stupid. How about this? I'm not good enough. It starts to make all these things up, right? Remember when I said your limbic system is designed to make you average or less than average. When your brain has low chemistry, if you don't know it's coming, it will come up with a reason for feeling that way. It will come up with a reason for feeling that way. Very interesting. I used to drive back and forth from Berkeley when I was doing a job up there and come back to train the military every 2 weeks. It was always like 105, 103, 107 outside the car when I was on the way down. So check this about yourself. Your limbic system is designed to exaggerate. It loves exaggerating. It loves when you feel like you're not doing enough to say you're horrible. Say, you suck at this. Everyone's better at this. This is never going to work out. Better late than never, somebody just wrote. All of those things are your head saying it's okay to be average or less than average. But here's what happens with the temperature. So notice this about yourself. See if you can find where you exaggerate. I would be driving down from Berkeley, and it would be like 103. And somebody would call and I would say, yeah, it's like 106 degrees. Isn't that crazy? I was looking right at the temperature. Remember, when you are anxious, your prejudice and bias increase, and your exaggeration and fabrication increases. Why? Because your limbic system is made to warn other people or to gather sympathy, right? So if I turned around and said, I really want to warn you about the temperature, then I would exaggerate the temperature as if you didn't think 103 was already hot, as if I had to make it 106, right? So catch yourself, see where you're exaggerating. Those small exaggerations are also the cause of anxiety, because every time your brain exaggerates, you know it. Every time it lies, you know it. You know it. So when we talk about a leader has integrity, no one has integrity. No one. We demonstrate moments of following through properly. So we demonstrate moments of integrity. No one, you don't have integrity. It's not for sale at Target, right? We demonstrate moments of having integrity. So thanks for following. This is, I usually don't do TikTok lives, but I've realized in the classes I lead and series I lead around that all these folks out here on TikTok are, you know, we're all living real lives. We're all living real lives. And it's so simple to make small changes, but they're not taught. Thanks very much, Dinesh. I appreciate it there. These things aren't taught, but yet if you're on here and you're listening to Jordan Peterson or Joe Dispenza sorry, some of the names are escaping me, all these really great speakers, they're actually talking about neuroscience. They're talking about brain chemistry. When they talk about make your bed, they're talking about brain chemistry. When Mel Robbins says, Mel Robbins is a fantastic speaker to follow. When Mel Robinson says, if you're procrastinating, count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then do something for 5 minutes. Here at in our program, we call this do one thing. Do one thing. One of my other Navy SEAL mentors who I work with, he'll tell candidates when you're starting to lose it out there and you feel like it's too cold, too hot, you're too tired, too overwhelmed, you count to 5 and you bring your best self. Mel Robbins says count down from 5 and then just do something for 5 minutes. It's all the same. They're not copying each other. It's just that that's your brain chemistry, and what works, works. And there's only so many words in the English language, and that's the way we phrase it. So, oh, you just got that book for, which book is that? Which book, the Mel Robbins or the What's Your Business? Okay. So my business is, you can see it at directaction.us. I train the Navy SEAL candidates. I help develop corporate culture, work with first responders, different things. And I do a bunch of youth programs on confidence, anxiety, how to really build your best self. I'll tell you something. Years ago, you might find this interesting. I hope you do. Years ago, have you ever thought that people aren't that smart? You ever looked around and said, why do people not seem that smart? You know, oh, the Make Your Bed book, yeah. Why do people are brilliant. Every one of your brains is actually built for rock star brilliance in some area, right? But we are designed to have to learn and practice it. And here's one reason why. In an evolutionary sense, if you were instantly brilliant and instantly fearless, you'd walk right off the edge. We would do so many stupid things, we'd never make it as a civilization, right? We're already close to the line half the time. We'd never make it as a civilization. So think about it. Of course, your brain is designed to slow you down. It's designed to use anxiety and depression and fear to actually say, I better slow your roll. If I don't slow your roll, you're going to discover everything so much, you're going to advance so fast, it's going to be crazy, right? Look at technology. Our technology advancing so fast, our heads would advance fast too, but we are designed to be average and trend towards the negative. Designed to be average and trend towards the negative. We're actually designed for brilliance, but it's not natural. We have to help each other learn stuff and help each other do stuff and then learn more stuff and do more stuff. So somebody says, did a smart man tell you not to be smart? You're going to have to explain that one to me, JJ, because I'm not smart enough to understand that one. So this week I realized I need therapy, and this live just cements the fact that I need it. Well, you might and you might not, but I'll throw this out there. Therapy is a different term for a lot of people. So don't get crazy about it. Meaning there's many different types of therapists. There's many different types of therapy. It's all going to come down to behaviors. It's all going to come down to behaviors. Remember, your brain and my brain works on the same chemistry, just in different ratios, different history, all these things, the way we've trained our heads and life has trained us and genetics have trained us and whatever. So, but we all have the same chemistry. So take a look at it. It's all going to start with behaviors. And I encourage you to start your day with 2 or 3 behaviors. Don't be in a hurry in the morning. Wake up early enough where you can go slow. Go slow. You can go consistently, but you can go slow. When you start your day with 2 or 3 behaviors for completion, you brush your teeth for an extra minute or 2, right? That actually helps your brain. Remember, repetitive motions early in the morning are like little vacations for your brain. Little vacations. So it gets a chance for your unconscious to maybe drift some little parts up into your conscious mind. Those things you're not conscious of. You ever been in the shower or brushing your teeth and you think, I know what I'll do. I know how I'll solve that problem. That's an example of that. That's an example of giving your head a break while you're doing repetitive motions like cleaning something, like making your bed. That's your serotonin, your dopamine levels, and your oxytocin levels, all getting little bumps, a lot of dopamine in there in the morning. So you need to find your website. Okay, my website is directaction.us. Our Thursday night class is free. Super important to me that we get good information out to people because your brain's a rock star level. Absolutely rock star level. But a lot of times we hear these amazing speakers so much better than I will ever be. These amazing speakers. But what you're hearing is concepts. Remember, your brain doesn't know what to do with concepts. I asked the question at an ROTC unit at a university in California last week, and I said, hey, what does a leader have for traits? And someone said integrity. I said, what's integrity? And the whole place went silent. And I said, do you feel that? All of your brains just said, holy crap, I have no idea what integrity is. Nothing. No idea what integrity is. And then someone said, well, it's doing the right thing while no one's watching, like we always hear. And I said, well, what's the right thing? Because that's different too for different people. So you realize why your brain is so confused and so anxious. We're hearing all these things like what's integrity, and to your brain it's like, look, stop using concepts on me. I have no idea what that means. No idea what that means, what integrity is. So, and thank you very much for Enrique. You need more JJ going at it. So think about your integrity. Integrity is this. I'll give you 2 things, integrity and confidence. Integrity, consider it this way, or any way you want, but consider it this way if you will. Yes, and someone just said something interesting. They said integrity is doing the moral right thing. I've worked in 21 different countries. The moral right thing is entirely different in many of them. In many of them. We even have difference in the states. We got the death penalty, no death penalty. We've got people voting on all sorts of issues that I'm not going to bring up because it'll send your heads into fight, flight, or freeze. So here's how morals are created. You know, I'm sure many of you have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Morality is one of the very top of the pyramid. Morality is a byproduct. Whatever degree your morality develops, it is a byproduct of how you approach safety and how you approach your physical habits and discipline based on your brain chemistry. Meaning, if you wanted to become more ethical and more moral, in fact, you know what? I'm going to do this on Thursday night. I'm going to do the Maslow's class on Thursday, and we'll talk about this. If you wanted to become more ethical and more moral, if you want your prejudice and your bias, and those are not racial terms, by the way, you have your favorite kind of ice cream. This is better than this. I like this job better than that. These are all prejudice and bias, right? So don't get spun up and think that term is just racial or religion or gender orientation or preference. They're not. They're not. Your brain is designed to actually have that. And the more educated and familiar, the more you risk it and get to know people, the lower your prejudice and bias is. Why? Because the more you learn about yourself and the more you make good, positive choices, the more you choose environments that are not threatening. So that means you don't have to agree and disagree with people more. You are making more positive choices and directions. Right? So you don't have to keep your prejudice and biases high about life. We don't have to be as afraid of it all because we're making choices. We're more aware of ourselves. So prejudice and bias are going to directly correlate with your self-awareness. With your self-awareness. That's incredible when you look at how your brain works. When you are anxious or afraid, our prejudice and bias increases. You know, we'll talk about that more later. So when we think about morals, ethics, problem solving, the brain chemistry, confidence, achievement, self-respect, the brain chemistry of that is a consequence of how we treated ourselves physically and how we learned. How we treated ourselves physically. I learned something and then I added to my behaviors. I learned something and I added to my behaviors. I learned something and I added to my behaviors. Oh, I'm stressed out about that. I'm going to learn something about it, and I'm going to create behaviors to actually accommodate more positive chemistry. Guess what happens? Now I listen better, so my relationships improve. Just like that. And I mean the same day. Try this today if you want. I invite you. Next time you're going to agree or disagree, we started out this way. Next time you're going to disagree or agree, tell that person, even out loud, when you're about to disagree, I haven't thought of it that way before. I work frequently in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Berkeley. So just in politics alone, those are 3 entirely different countries in politics. So when I went up to Berkeley, everybody was so aggressively polarized about politics. And honestly, I have the same job no matter who the president is. I'm going to try to help people out, live a good life. I'm 55 years old. I've been through a lot of presidents. I'm going to go to work and try to do the best job I can, no matter who the president is, right? So that's my view. So I'm not really polarized about it. But when I went to Berkeley, people would test me in every conversation. They would open the conversation with, did you hear what so-and-so said? And even if I had, I would say, I don't really watch the news, but I'm interested. So tell me, go on. And what happened is by the second or third time I would meet these people, they didn't test me anymore. They'd come up and say, oh, the dogs look great today. You see what happened? Without agreeing or disagreeing, with just listening, with just valuing the energy that they had about something, I was able to keep them off the left board, keep their limbic system from activating so highly. And now we were able to have a conversation about the rest of their life. We're able to get to know them, right? Pretty crazy. So when you're facing it with someone who agrees or disagrees, and you feel like you're agreeing or disagree, I nod my head a lot to people. And so I need to, I'm working on it. I'm working on actually saying, oh, that's interesting, and not nodding. Because when I nod or when I shake my head, I've started my own conversation. So by definition, I've either negatively stopped listening or minimized my listening, or I've enthusiastically stopped listening or minimized my listening. Someone asked, do you think there's been a decline in morality in society? No idea, because I've only been alive for this many years. And remember, I only see what I see. And I only hear what people tell me. And that's a small subset. So, and what I love about your statement is we are often talking about morality and ethics like it's way out here. It's actually just right in here. It's right in your head. It's right in your head. If you wanted to improve the morality or ethics or problem solving or respect in your environment, you just start it here. Because here's what happens. If I have a good level of self-respect, then I won't get caught up in conversation after conversation that I lose that in. And so then either that person is going to shift and be a little more, have more self-respect as well. Self-respect is, morality and ethics is a direct consequence of the brain chemistry of self-respect, right? So it's in my head. So I encourage you to do this, because remember, news, politics, a lot of these things, they're trying to make you focus way up here. They're trying to say, hey, the sky is falling. And it's falling in a way you agree with or falling in a way you disagree with. Either way, it's way up here. I had some parents in the last 2 presidents, right? And I love using both of them because they're different parties. So it doesn't matter to me which party they are. So I had some parents come up with the last president and they said, how do you train these military kids under this president? And then now with this president, current sitting, parents will come up and say, how do you train these young kids? And I have one answer for them. Look out there and tell me which of those young people don't deserve a well-rounded, really supportive upbringing. Look out there and tell me which one of them I should let not be able to learn about themselves and about life and be self-aware because of how people voted or because what you do or don't like about politics. So this is what I'm throwing out to you. Our brain is designed to society is designed to try to focus you way out here. Way out here. That's where so much of our anxiety comes from. We're complaining about things that actually don't change my day much. You know what changes my day? Really listening to you, understanding you, That changes my day. And then if 2 of us do that, that changes 4, 6, 8 people's day, right? I'm not avoiding that news. I'm not ignoring it. My head's not in the sand. What I'm not doing is letting that dictate what I'm fight, flight, or freeze about. Because that means you're not going to be able to listen as well. You're not going to be as smart. You're not going to be as, let's go into self-respect. Do you know what self-respect is? Self-respect is one thing. It's the only respect. Remember, I can't disrespect you unless I've disrespected myself in my head first. So I'm not really disrespecting you. I'm just projecting my lack of self-respect. And here's what self-respect is to your brain. The ability to review myself, the ability to notice how I feel and what I'm doing, and make a choice that creates positive chemistry. Just for me, not for you. Positive chemistry, just for me. Because we know how it works. If it creates positive chemistry for me, it is more likely to help you be positive. And if you won't get positive, I will be more likely to find a peer group or an environment who will. So I say self-respect is the only respect. I will not be able to respect you without self-respect. And I will not be able to disrespect you without losing self-respect. So self-respect is the only respect. So think about that. What happens to you? You had to feel ugly to project ugly. Very strong limbic system. I've spent 36 years now in some sort of violence prevention and violence response. So my limbic system is highly trained. That negative Jim is highly trained. When should fight, flight, and freeze fall in is the question. Well, that's a great question. You are going to go into fight, flight, or freeze hundreds to thousands of times a day. You are. Anytime, remember, fight, flight, or freeze begins with a feeling that we're out of control. Any change or uncertainty makes you feel that way. That's why when you agree with a news channel or you disagree with a news channel, you are in fight, flight, or freeze in both instances. It's really fantastic, right? Because you're agreeing with something that is scary. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that you agree, you're still in fight, flight, or freeze. You will be in fight, flight, or freeze hundreds to thousands of times a day. There's all sorts of research with different numbers. So we don't need the exact numbers. Let's say a lot. You'll be there a lot. Any change or uncertainty. How about this? Some of you come in the house, you ever experienced this? You come in the house at the end of the day and you're tired and you've had a long day. You're just changing directions. The house is where the people you care most about live. But you come in and there's a little bit of noise or there's something going on and you're angry or irritated or frustrated. Angry, irritated, or frustrated. That's your fight, flight, or freeze system saying, oh my gosh, more change and uncertainty, even though that's a group of people I love and I know. Those are the most fantastic place to learn to train your prefrontal cortex. So every day, before you go in your house, before you walk into work, tell yourself, I'm going to walk in the door and I'm going to find something I like about everyone. I'm going to walk in the door and go, there's my crazy toys all over the floor. Place is chaos in here. Babies doing this, screaming and yelling. You are going to start training your prefrontal cortex to be superpower. Remember, this is just chemistry, right? So it's going to happen for some people faster than others, but it's going to happen. So the question was, when are we in fight, flight, or freeze, or how is it used? It is used, here's the purpose of fight, flight, or freeze, as I describe it in class. It is used to stop input, to seek relief, and then to eliminate the relationship. And get this, most of the people we're irritated with and testy with are people we don't want to eliminate the relationship with. So know it, anytime you get frustrated, it's actually a response to fear and anxiety. Anytime you get angry, it's a response to fear and anxiety. It's a response to feeling out of control. Anytime. Anytime you're frustrated, you might tell yourself, gosh, someone might say, you're so irritated, you're so angry. But you can catch yourself and say, actually, I must be anxious and afraid of something. And then when you realize that, you'll say, I'm not out of control at all. It was just a big change. I had an exhausting day and came in the house and there's toys all over and the kids are there and all those things. So you start training yourself to walk in the room better. I'm going to find something I like about everyone. Find something I like about everyone when I walk in the door. Okay, the question is, what about toxic households? Love this. Love that word. Toxic relationships, toxic households. Thank you, Gretch. I so appreciate that. And my name is Kim. I really appreciate that as well. One of the reasons I started these series is I realized that people were brilliant. These authors, these so educated people, the speakers we have, they're fantastic. But we're not delivering things in a way that your brain actually understands it. Like we talked about, and it's not that people's brains are dumb, they're brilliant, but they only do the next step. And if you're running around anxious and frustrated and tired a lot, who's the parent out there, right? Tell me that's not you, right? If you're running around anxious and tired and frustrated all the time, well, then our intellect is minimized. Our self-respect is minimized. It's a different part of your brain. And when I'm frustrated, the resources have been taken from my prefrontal cortex, and they've been utilized from my fight, flight, or freeze system. So I literally can't do both things very well at once. I can be really afraid, or I can be really positive and confident. That's why anxiety erodes your confidence. So the question was, toxic households or toxic relationships. Let me throw this out there. The relationship isn't toxic. You are. And I want you to really hear me on this, if you can. Just consider it. Let's say I'm in a relationship with someone and it's hostile. And I'm like, oh my gosh, especially when you're a young person, it's even easier because people haven't really settled into life yet. So let's say it's hostile. Maybe that person's toxic. Maybe they're miserable. But I'm sure that I am. I'm sure that I am. Thursdays, one of the things we'll talk about in the class, and again, our website is directaction.us. The class is free. It's super important to me that people understand how powerful they are and what steps. But I'm toxic. I'm the one who's sick to my stomach. I'm the one whose relationships are being ruined at work and everywhere else because I can't bring my best self, right? I used to hear the expression a lot when I was in shrink school way back when, that I gave away my power. I promise you, you have never given away your power. That is not the way a brain works. Unless your brain's been chopped in half in a car accident, then the car accident took it away. You've never given away your power. You haven't. Your limbic system is so activated that you can't see that you have your power. You haven't given it away. No one has it. No one has to give it back to you. You have to start little tiny behaviors. Little tiny behaviors. So I worked with a group of law enforcement officers who were working in sex trafficking. And the reason I got with them is I did a class for the district attorney in a city. And what I described was, why can't people in abusive relationships leave? And some of the officers said, yes, why don't they? And I said, it's not that they don't, they can't. Because the part of your brain that has confidence and problem solving and planning is your prefrontal cortex. When you're afraid or you're depressed or you're super anxious all the time, you can't activate those parts of your brain. That's why we hear things like, I gave away my power. So literally those officers would meet with these young people who were being sex trafficked, or what, if you're old enough, you called it prostitution or different things, different levels. Whatever term works for you is fine. And I would say, it's not that they won't leave, they can't. See, you're asking them to be all the way on the other side of the football field. Just like that. They can't be. They can't be. So one thing at a time. So if you feel like you're in a tough household or a tough relationship, don't even focus on the relationship. One thing at a time. Think about one behavior, one little tiny thing that you used to do when you were really confident and happy. Was it you did the dishes on time? Was it you folded the laundry all the way? Was it you stepped outside in the backyard 3 or 4 times a day for 5 minutes? Notice what I haven't done? I have not said anything about your significant other. I've not said anything about who they are. I have not labeled them. I have not even discussed whether they're right, wrong, good, bad, all those things. It's not relevant. You need to get your prefrontal cortex activated. And here's the thing. What does being focused on somebody hostile do? It takes away being focused on me. Takes away. If I'm going to get run off the road by a car and I go into fight, flight, or freeze, if I'm going to fight, flight, or freeze and going to get run off the road by a car, even if the car just starts to move into my lane, it's not even super dangerous. You ever notice the song I just was loving is now the most irritating sound in the world? Because all I can focus on is that car. So the part of my brain that was enjoying my country music or whatever I was playing is now had the resources stolen. So now it's just noise and it's irritating and annoying because I'm focused on that car. Because your fight, flight, or freeze system is super smart. It's not very intelligent, but it's super powerful. It's going to take your focus. How do we get it back? One little tiny thing. So pick one thing. You might wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I stopped making my bed. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to make my bed. Here's the trick. Stare at it. Make your bed and stare at it for like 10 seconds. Laugh at yourself. Be goofy. Stare at it for that 10 seconds and feel like, this is the goofiest thing I've ever done. Because laughing at yourself activates your prefrontal cortex. So when people talk to me about I'm in a toxic relationship, my partner is toxic, I think, well, maybe, but what I know for sure is that you are, because you're telling me you are. I feel sick to my stomach. I've lost my confidence. I gave my power away. We use the expression in class a lot that there are two boards on the wall. We have a left board and a right board. The left board is your limbic system. The right board is your prefrontal cortex. What we often say is when you're on the left board, when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, you can't even see the right board. You're blinded from that. All I can see in the argument is the argument. Save myself. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? The right board is where your confidence is. It's where your problem solving is. It's where your empathy is. It's where your self-respect is. It's not gone. You haven't given it away, I promise. Your head works just fine. So why those sex trafficked or those abused people don't leave? Because they can't. Because the part of you that takes one step at a time and put one foot forward is on a board that is invisible to you when you're this stressed out. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's just chemistry. There's nothing that you can't demonstrate and measure in chemistry right now, because our ability to measure your heightened brain reactivity in different areas is super high, much higher than it's ever been in the last 15 years. So what happens is now we get to measure what happens when I mention a subject to you, right? Your resources get sucked out of your prefrontal cortex anytime there's change. And if I stay over there on the left board, my cortisol, my adrenaline goes up, my fight, flight, or freeze goes up, and it's trying to decide, stop the input, seek relief, eliminate the relationship. Eliminate the relationship. When you know this, then you can try to catch yourself. Because even though you can't see the right board, you cognitively know, there I go again. I'm having an argument. That means my brain's trying to eliminate the relationship. If you come from a background of violence or military or all these things, or you have some tough times or a tough relationship, you're going to really have a strong eliminate the relationship in your fight, flight, or freeze. That's okay, because that means you have a strong prefrontal cortex. It's just not getting the same training. It's just not getting to the gym as much. You're getting to the fight, flight, or freeze gym quite frequently. So pick little things. Start out in the morning. When you first get up in the morning, look around and say, I'm going to clean or organize one thing that's going to take me like 2 minutes or less. I'm going to make the bed. Oh, pair of shoes I left out. I'm going to put the shoes away. Your prefrontal cortex goes, whoop, takes a big bump. It says, right on. I cared about something. My integrity responded because I thought about something and I followed through. Little things. Don't change the world in one day. I cannot be across the football field like this. To take a step, take a step, take a step, take a step, right? So thank you so much for helping me out. Again, I wanted to jump on here today because I'm putting together a new class on the behaviors of neuroscience and relationships, how we develop confidence and all these things. And so your responses, having this conversation come through, super helpful to me. Please save this video on your profile. I sure will, and I appreciate it, the feedback, that it's really helpful to me, super helpful, because I only have one brain, and I've been thinking and working on this stuff a long time, but the way people respond tells me how another brain would phrase it, how another brain would perceive it, and all these things. But I will leave you with this. Your brain is brilliant. And I mean it. I never make idle compliments. Your brain is brilliant. So every time you make little tiny behaviors of following through, oh, I noticed a dish in the sink. If your brain said wash the dish, if it doesn't, if your brain says who cares, they'll do them tomorrow. But if your brain tells you, the little voice that says take care of that dish, do it. That's your confidence level and your self-respect level being trained. All confidence is I thought I should get it done and I did it. That's confidence. And then when you do that little thing, the idea that you finally, when it comes up to something that makes you a little more anxious than procrastination is just anxiety. It's anxiety over, I'm going to have to change direction and I don't see the reward. That's all procrastination is. It's your brain saying, oh my gosh, I have one more thing to do. Let me find some way to avoid this. So I even made the face when I said it. I even made the anxious face, right? That's why your brain loses confidence when you procrastinate. So you don't have to finish something. Just start it. Just start it. If you said, I'm just going to make the bed, and you didn't like how it was made, you're like, well, okay. But you might turn around and remake it. You might turn around and not remake it. Again, this isn't about getting crazy. It's about that your brain, the little tiny voice in your head said, start this now. Turns out that voice is like brilliant. That voice is like the most brilliant voice in the world. You know exactly when to start everything. You know when to start getting ready to leave. You know when to start getting ready for bed. It takes tremendous psychological energy to not listen to that voice, but the voice is very quiet. The question is your class therapy for retired veterans? I work with a lot of veterans and absolutely USA Raiders. I love it because if you're a veteran or you have a lot of history, and so let me throw this out there. People talk about post-traumatic stress and all these things. Well, there's no one I know who doesn't have post-traumatic stress in some area. If you've ever had a super tough relationship and your current relationship is like, oh, they just said this, gosh, I've been through that before, this is horrible, I wonder if my life is going to fall apart in my relationship. By definition, that's post-traumatic stress. It's not a big thing. You notice I didn't say disorder. I said post-traumatic stress. It is putting the energy, the emotional inertia, as it's sometimes called, it's putting the energy from a past situation and learning, the negative energy in the past, into a current one. So it's combining those energies because your brain says, hey, I've been here before and it sucked. It was painful. So the person the USA Raiders had asked, is it a retired veterans? It's not about being in combat. That's why a person who's administrator or a person who's a police officer but never, every time you have to think about something negative, you are training, you're doing a workout rep at the negative gym in your limbic system, your fight, flight, or freeze system. You've got to, thank you for waiting to help my husband. Absolutely, and I love this. I love this. So this person's husband, I spent years and years, 36 years now, thinking about negatives, planning on it, worked in pedophile prevention, extreme domestic abuse, sexual assault prevention and response. And that's just as a civilian. In my SEAL team career, you have all those things. So it's not just the behaviors, it's your thoughts that are creating the negative gym. And what I love about this person who's married to husbands overseas is that I always say to the military folks, look, eventually you got to go home to your living room. And that's some heavy shit. You got to go home to your living. You got to work that out because you've been going to the negative gym 24/7 for months and months and months at a time. I don't care if you're an admin person or you're a Navy SEAL. Doesn't matter to me. So they got to go home to that living room and they got to figure out how to bring all those negative gym reps back to an environment where negative gym reps aren't warranted. They're not required. They're not helpful. Right? So yes, absolutely. Veterans, all these folks. So really, really incredible. Your brain is superpower. Superpower. It'll freak you out when you realize how positively powerful your brain is. People always say, oh, don't worry, be happy or be positive. Your brain has no idea what to do with that information. I'm going to talk about specific behaviors that create that. Your brain has no idea what to do with just be happy. It's like when people say, oh, don't worry about it. Or how about this? Get over it. I don't want you to get over anything. Those were valuable lessons. Those were valuable learnings. I want you to be able to use them in your prefrontal cortex so that we're not destroyed by them. You get to use them for positivity. I don't want you to get over anything, right? Those were valuable lessons. Those things that people would tell you to get over, that's why you are who you are. That's totally why you are who you are. You're standing in front of me as this awesome person with this great brain power, and people are telling you to forget about it or get over it. It's not even sensible. Plus, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it. You want to build your prefrontal cortex, your positive chemistry. So the more negative you've had some experiences, the more positive we have to build. That's just math, right? But remember, the limbic system is super powerful. Here's a number for you. When you think of something negative or you go into fight, flight, or freeze, you're going to typically last at least 20 minutes before you begin to get back to your prefrontal cortex. Before you begin to get it. Now, if you spin your head up and you keep thinking about it, it could take 90 minutes, an hour, it could take hours. So that means your negative Jim is getting trained and retrained by your own thoughts. When something positive happens, it's 2 to 5 seconds. 2 to 5 seconds. So you have at least 20 minutes of negativity. Every time you read a negative post, every time you say something negative, every time we get stuck on the news, your head's going to go minimize capacity, doing reps at the negative gym for the next 20 to 90 minutes minimum. When something positive happens, this is why your environment matters so much. When something positive happens, 3 to 5 seconds. Your chemistry goes boop, and then comes down, boop, and then comes down. Why is this happening? Because it's important that if something dangerous moved into the neighborhood, I don't go 3 to 5 seconds, oh, forgot about that. Let's move on, right? So it's an evolutionary strength that negativity lasts so long. But positivity is very short because we need to remember negativity. We need to remember that you can really hurt if you get run over by a car. We need to remember that the saber-toothed tiger will eat us. If it was 3 to 5 seconds of fear, that saber-toothed tiger would be out of sight. I'd be back there doing my crocheting, doing my little knitting, and then bam, it'd come back around the corner, right? So that's why it lasts so long. That's why it lasts so long. It's smart. So you have to create a habit of training your prefrontal cortex. All the information's out there. You're on TikTok. The information's out there everywhere about what to do. So take some of these people. Mel Robbins is wonderful at it. They're just rock star speakers and authors. All these different type of things. But start out with little tiny behaviors. And thank you, Starkey Villa fan and Lord J. I really appreciate it. Your compliments are very inspiring because it is not my way to want to be on camera. I only started doing this because it's a necessity to, if we want to get good information out. So pick one thing. Write to me. I answer every email at directaction.us. I answer every email. I'm working stiff, so it can take me a minute. I have free Zoom classes every Thursday night, which is all about this, only we use the whiteboard and we'll show, most Thursdays I'll show another person's short video because I want you to keep hearing from other speakers. Remember, you're going to hear someone else's voice differently than mine. Might be better, might be worse, might be one sentence they say that I glossed over it and it just hits you just right. Just hits you just right. But then we have to do something. Yeah, on Zoom, on directaction.us, by the way, you'll see a registration for it, an Eventbrite registration, directaction.us. And then every Thursday night at 6 p.m. PST. These are the same courses that I teach for first responders and for future therapists and executives. Remember, we're hearing all the time about corporate culture. That's just how a head works. How many people have heard the word diversity and inclusion? The way that's taught and the way that's instructed, I always say it's division and exclusion. I say, oh, we're going to go in and learn about division and exclusion, right? Prejudice and bias, understanding people, listening to people, is a matter of how you recognize and train your prefrontal cortex. I run a military program for Navy SEAL candidates and other candidates. If you come there, you know what you'll never see? You'll never see someone make fun of someone else. They won't even think about it. It won't cross their mind because they're constantly training their prefrontal cortex. Thanks, AOC. Appreciate it. One more time for the website. Yes, absolutely. directaction.us. directaction.us. It's up on my, if you follow me, it's in the top of my, the top of that little thing there, directaction.us. Someone said, why when someone is mean to me, I can't get out of my head for hours? Because your head is smart. Your head is smart, artist. Your head is smart. Your head is designed to say, that was threatening. And guess what? When it's not a real threat, someone can be mean to you, someone can be insulting to you. Remember, your brain is designed to look at physical threat. It's designed to say, hey, saber-toothed tiger, that's a real thing. It's coming closer, it's gone. Most of our threats in life now are in our head. Someone was just mean to us. It doesn't actually turn into a physical threat. So artists ask, when someone is mean to me, I can't let it out of my head for hours. Absolutely. Because your brain, faced with that chemistry, says, what in God's green earth is going on here? What is actually happening? I don't see a saber-toothed tiger. I thought I saw a saber-toothed tiger, and it was just words. It didn't turn into anything. Your head has no idea what to make of that. Mine doesn't either. It affects me for hours too, artist. It affects me for hours. The important thing to know is that, one, that's going to happen forever. But the more we understand it, and the more I turn around and say, oh, I'm going to organize something, I'm going to clean something, I'm going to really listen to a person, I'm going to take a moment and find something I like about someone. What you're doing, artist Amy, is you're shortening the amount of time that you're spending in your limbic system. You can't stop your limbic system, and you don't want to. That would make you like a sociopath, right? We don't want to. You want your fight, flight, or freeze system to be really strong. It's super helpful. It's what saves you in an emergency. But if you're stuck there for hours, little tiny things. Can I find something I like about someone? It's going to be hard. I might even tell someone and say, gosh, I'm so irritable about that traffic or about that person who said that. Can you just keep telling me about your day? Go ahead and tell me. I'm listening to you. I'm just a little thrown off. Even by me saying that, I had to activate my prefrontal cortex. And guess what? Now I'm talking to artist Amy, and I shared with artist Amy, that traffic really threw me off, but I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you, Amy. Go ahead. See, by doing that, artist Amy and I are shortening the amount of time the negative chemistry is reinforcing itself, is strengthening itself. So artist Amy and I are now together on doing this. And so I might say, artist Amy, do you want to talk about it? She's like, no, you go ahead, because she knows talking about it may or may not help me right now. I'm listening to you. So listening to someone else is one of the fastest ways to minimize your negative chemistry. Really listening. And I'll give you a trick. This is a great trick. You're not listening for the topic. Listen to how they feel. Ask yourself, if artist Amy here was talking, you're welcome, artist Amy. If artist Amy here was talking to me about, oh, this person was so mean to me, I can't get out of my head. The words, this person was mean to me, I can't get out of my head, that's easy enough to understand, right? What I'm listening to is who Amy is when she said it. How does Amy feel? How does she feel? If you really want to promote your positive chemistry and your prefrontal cortex, listen to how someone feels about what they said. Because guess what else? I don't have to agree or disagree. Remember, Amy didn't come in and say, can you fix me? Amy came in and said, that person was so mean, it's stressed out, I can't get it out of my head. Listening to how Amy feels about it takes me out of the wonder if there's anything I can do. If I wanted to really make Amy feel better, I would pay attention to her, to Amy. That's what I would do. So we're typically listening to words and our brain says, uh-oh, uncertainty. I should try to fix Amy, try to help Amy, you want to help Amy? Listen to how Amy feels. Because then I'm going to say, wow, that sounds stressful, and I think I felt that way before. Notice, didn't fix Amy. Nothing to be fixed. Amy's just fine. Amy's just fine. So give that a shot. I'm going to leave you. I have to prepare for this class, but your questions and your comments are so helpful to me. I really love it, and thanks so much. On Sundays and Tuesdays, we go live with our military class. This is only the second time I went live on TikTok. So you've really helped my confidence level by not beating me up and being mean to me like someone was to artist Amy. right? So my website is directaction.us, directaction.us. Write an email, any questions you have, I get to them all. We have a free Zoom class every Thursday at 6 p.m. The registration's on there, and I write all sorts of articles lately. Some of them are long, forgive me, I'm working on it, but about how this works, about the little things we do to make your brain get into that rock star place. So thank you very much. Enjoy this. I appreciate it. And Y card star. That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, everybody. Have a great day. Directaction.us. Sign up for Thursdays. Super simple. It's 25, 30 people there in the room. Everybody's on camera, so people know each other. Our programs are the most welcoming, because if you're training your prefrontal cortex well, you're not going to insult anybody. People won't mock you. It's just that kind of environment. It's hard chargers, Navy SEAL folks, Marine Corps folks, civilians, young people, older people, single folks, couples. Really, it's really amazing that when you're training your brain the right way, you're going to find yourself, someone's going to really have to be rude to you for you not to get along with them. Because when your brains are working well, it's rock star relationship builders. So you are awesome. Thanks so much. Directaction.us. Send me an email. Tune in on Thursdays. Class is free. And you've been great. Thanks so much.